Let's move on to another story that touches again on foreign affairs and things from overseas. The Biden administration this week cleared the way for the release of 5 American citizens detained in Iran by issuing a blanket waiver for international banks to transfer, get this, $6 billion. That's billion with a B, in frozen Iranian assets, plus the release of 5 Iranian citizens held in the U.S. Brianna, this seems like an absolutely disgraceful move by this administration to empower Iran, which we know is a terrorist regime that is trying to develop its own nuclear program. What on earth could the Biden administration's justification could be for trading money for hostages like this?
There is absolutely no justification for this. But first of all, the fact that on Monday, members of Congress were made aware that this waiver was put in, the anniversary of 9/11, when Biden, meanwhile, didn't even go to any of the 3 crash sites. Okay, so let's just put that aside. Iran is the world's leading state sponsor of terrorism. When you negotiate with terrorists, you embolden them. You give them an incentive to take more hostages in the future because they know that they now have leverage. And I will just make a point. Donald Trump did do hostage negotiations when he was in office, but never did he swap prisoners for prisoners and then give them money. So the fact that the Biden administration is not only swapping prisoners for prisoners and then giving them $6 billion in money, his administration also can't guarantee what that money is going to be used for. They say they hope it'll be used for humanitarian purposes, because we all know that Iran cares about humanitarian aid.
Yeah. And I mean, Naomi, does this now make Americans less safe around the world? Because if obviously now a price will be paid, and quite a high price for them, by the Biden administration, it would seem like it's a real incentive to bad actors around the world.
I mean, it does set a precedent. We obviously have other Americans detained illegally elsewhere around the world. For example, in Russia, we have, Evan Gershowitz from the Wall Street Journal that's been held there for, 150 odd days. And so I think this sets a dangerous precedent going forward. I think what was kind of interesting is that we had this inkling that there would be this waiver for this money to be transferred, first through South Korea and then through Qatar and then to Iran. But what the new information was these hostages, these 5 Iranians that the U.S. is going to release. And I think that changes the calculus. Obviously, Iran is making steps with its nuclear program. It's as we've spoken about, it's like a safe harbor for terrorism. And so I think that that also makes other allies really uneasy. We have Israel that's already sort of questioning U.S. ties, and obviously we still have the Russia war and invasion of Ukraine going on at the moment, and it kind of weakens Biden's position on the world stage.
Indeed. Now, back to domestic politics, Senator Mitt Romney of Utah, who was, of course, the 2012 Republican nominee, he's announced that he is retiring, saying that he wants to make way for a new generation of leaders. But he had this to say about the state of the Republican Party. Have a listen.
Well, there's no question but that the Republican Party today is in the shadow of Donald Trump. He is the leader of the greatest portion of the Republican Party. It's a populist, I believe, demagogue portion of the party. Look, I represent a small wing of the party, if you will. I call it the wise wing of the Republican Party. And I don't believe we're going away.
Brianna, the wise wing of the party. I mean, honestly, how pretentious can you get? This is that country club wing of the party that just wants to go and lose gracefully to Democrats every single time, like he did to Barack Obama. Brianna, what is your take on Romney's resignation?
Yeah, he actually runs the rhino wing of the party. I think that's what he meant to say. He doesn't run this like elite wing. And, he and other Democrats, actually, they talk about populism as if it is a bad thing to be a populist. There is nothing wrong with populists and having that kind of outlook for domestic policy. And I think Mitt Romney is right to sit this one out, especially given the fact that he, one, voted for Donald Trump's impeachment. And not that he has to follow along with party lines, but I think given the lack of evidence, it shows that he was doing it for political purposes. He's also worked, granted, with Democrats in bipartisan fashion for foreign policy, which has been fine. He has foreign policy experience, but some of his domestic policies that he has worked bipartisanly on, like gun control, it's a bit stepped far for someone who claims to be a Republican in the state of Utah, no less.
And Naomi, what are your thoughts on this? Because, you know, if you look at Mitt Romney and you look at that wing of the Republican Party, that wing of the party was not attractive to working-class Americans, to that broad middle that would have been going to the Democrats before and have been up for grabs ever since the Democrats went hard left and have left them behind.
Well, I think that's what makes Mitt Romney's retirement sort of most notable. It's sort of this really watershed moment for the Republican Party where there aren't as many centrists that there used to be on Capitol Hill. But I would just sort of point out the other interesting thing that I found out with his retirement, or the way that he announced it, is that he sort of said that, you know, he called on for this generational leadership change, which one was sort of like a more criticism of Trump, but also criticism of Biden, sort of calling for, you know, him to step down in a subtle and not subtle way. And so I think that was kind of, for me, the most notable part of this, what it meant for the Republican Party, but also what it meant for Democrats, because Mitt Romney has been, you know, willing to criticize Biden when it comes to, you know, inflationary spending. At the same time, you know, try to sort of create this path for him where he could also work bipartisan deals. And so I think, you know, it was a tacit, sort of a backward compliment, basically.
And finally, before you guys go, I've got to get your thoughts on this story. I love this here. A prankster crashed New York Fashion Week wearing a trash bag and shower cap on the catwalk. Have a look. Brianna, I didn't think he was an intruder until the guy came and tackled him. I mean, isn't a trash bag and a shower cap pretty much all the rage these days?
Yeah, it just goes to show you how pretentious all these people are, that they look at that, and if somebody was on the street wearing that, like a homeless individual, they would scoff at them. But if someone's walking the stage, they, you know, they want to clap. And if you look at the trend in clothing, like you mentioned, I mean, they sell clothes with holes in them, literally holes in them that you're not supposed to sew up. So it's just a decline of fashion.